So what you can see is that in total, if you look at the number of investors that have filed in the rural category versus the urban category, and assuming about two visas will be needed per applicant, which based on historical averages could be a little bit low, just depends on approval rates. You can see that the total visas required for the high unemployment, the urban category, is over 10,000, and we're at, let's say, about 8,600 needed for the rural category. The good news is that we do have the rollover. It would be nice if USCI, if they would continue issuing more of these along the year so we don't lose any this year. We'll see what they do for the rest of the fiscal year. But overall, in a worst case scenario for us, which is we don't take into account any investors that have already gotten their conditional green card and would not be included in here, it looks to us like probably about a 2-year wait in the rural category for enough visas to be available for everyone. Maybe you've even pushed that to 3 years, which gives 6,000, which is well more than the 4,000 shortage that we're estimating. Versus in the high unemployment category, to us, it's clear whether you think it's 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, it is going to be a very long wait for investors that get into that urban high unemployment category to actually get their green card. The good news is the visa bulletin has continued to stay current. So for investors that choose either urban or rural today, you can adjust status if you're within the US and get a lot of those benefits. And we do have heard from some investors, they don't care how long it takes to get that conditional green card as long as they can adjust. And that could be a very good justification. Although we are hearing from more investors with the data coming out, they prefer to just get through the process and get it all finalized as soon as possible. And in that case, rural has both faster processing and a shorter wait in terms of actually getting the physical green card itself and getting through that piece of the process.
Obviously, we all want everyone to get their green cards much sooner. And I think this is something that may or may not be addressed, for example, in 2027 when the program is reauthorized. But today's reality, and the reality that all EB-5 investors have faced for the last decade, is there are backlogs. There's a lot of demand, specifically from 2 countries, and there aren't enough green cards available to those 2 countries' foreign nationals to satisfy all that demand. And this is extremely relevant in urban TEAs, where there's only 1,000 of these visas available after the first full year, where we have a little bit of closer to double because of carryover. Okay. Now, does that mean that rural is not backlogged at all? Absolutely not. We see enough people waiting in line that the rural backlog also exists. But based on the numbers and based on how many green cards are available to be offered in that set aside, you're looking at a much shorter backlog of only about 2 years. And you could even say, okay, maybe it's a 3-year backlog. Fine. That's still going to get you your green card probably in less than half the time that it would take in an urban TEA project. What does this mean today for investors that are looking to invest? Well, luckily the visa bulletin has remained current, and I think the IIUSA conference that just happened in Houston, one of the key points that was kind of shared by Charlie Oppenheim was that, and he used to be the head of visa control at Department of State. One of the key points that he brought up is that there's just USCIS and Department of State are not getting through enough applications and issuing enough green cards to create a backlog appearing on the visa bulletin. Now, we can extrapolate that further and say, okay, well, when are they going to do that? And are they ever going to do that? And the answer is, I don't think that that's 100% the way that Department of State looks at it, right? They've given us the warning, and we'll talk about that already, which means they're looking at total demand, they're looking at filings, and they're not just looking at approvals. But at least in the short term, what this has done is it's allowed people to continue to concurrently file. So those investors who are in the US in a variety of categories, they're able to take advantage of concurrent filing, lock in an adjustment of status, get an EAD and an advanced parole, a work permit and a travel permit, and start living their lives in the US as they wait for the green card. And this kind of creates a very interesting conversation around these backlogs and how much you really care about them, depending on the project that you want to get into.
Now we've passed, we're either in or right past the sweet spot where applications are getting processed quickly, 9 months to a year for many of our rural 526s. We're up to almost 350 approvals already. Everything's working great. The adjustments are working, but we're now getting to the end of the RIA where all of a sudden we filled the pipeline for those set-aside visas, and we're going to be back to waiting for green cards even after approved. In the rural category, it's not going to be a massive wait, but there will likely be a wait already. High unemployment is going to be very long. It all depends on how fast we can get through the old China backlog for that to really play itself out for exactly how long it takes. But I'd say that we're now at that tail end of the good days where there's no backlog in the visa bulletin, so we can still concurrently file. We know that it's not going to be too bad of a wait in the rural category, but if you fast forward a year from today, I think it's going to be a very different conversation where the visa bulletin very likely will not be current anymore, and you can adjust status in either category. And you know that you're going to be waiting, let's say, 3 to 4 years in rural or 10 plus years in urban, depending on how fast the rest of the backlog gets cleared out. So I think that we're in still a very good position where the program's still working efficiently, smoothly, and it's still a great opportunity. But once a couple more things fall, it's not going to be quite as attractive of an opportunity as we have today for the program.
But the grandfathering clause that protects investors that file now, the fact that USCIS is processing a lot of those legacy filings much faster than they were in previous years. The fact that Department of State is issuing more green cards than they have in previous years. All of these things are progress, and the program continues to get better and better for investors. So yeah, I'm with Mike on this one that, the sooner the better, and definitely there's no time like the present in terms of EB5, because it seems like we just blinked. The RIA passed yesterday, and we're already into 2025 with just 2 years left in the RIA. So yeah, it's there's no time like the present. So let's say you're in an H-1B status in the US, the dates retrogress, a final action date appears in the past. Let's say it's March 2024, just for our purposes. And you're now filing in May of 2025. You are no longer current, as we say. And so you'd still be able to file your 526E, the EB5 application, but now very similar to how you have an I-140 where you can file that, but you don't get really any benefit out of it. Same thing with this EB5 application. Until those dates progress, and let's say you filed on May 10th, 2025, until the date that appears in the visa bulletin is either that date or later, you won't be able to file your adjustment of status. And there's 4 pretty big disadvantages to that. One, you don't get to lock in your children's age, which happens pretty much immediately when you file an adjustment of status right now. 2, you don't get new status in the United States. So if let's say you lose your job in an H-1B, you are now subject to that 60-day grace period. You have to find another employer sponsor to be able to remain in the country. With a pending adjustment, you don't have to worry about that. That pending adjustment actually gives you status in the United States and allows you to stay here. And then probably most importantly for a lot of people, not having an adjustment of status concurrently filed also leaves you out from getting the EAD, the employment authorization document, and the advanced parole, which is the travel document. And so you don't get that immediate benefit of having more flexibility to work wherever you want, to live wherever you want, to travel without visas. That's kind of the big downside there. The first step really should be hiring an immigration attorney. You definitely want to make sure that you've got an attorney in place and you're not trying to hire someone last minute when everyone else is also trying to file their application, right? A lot of firms will reach capacity. They won't be able to take on new clients. And you may have loved, an attorney that's done videos that you've seen, or maybe helped one of your friends file their application, and you reach out to them too late. It turns out they're no longer available. You really want to avoid that. The other thing with attorneys is, and we've got a bunch of videos on how to choose the right attorney. We've got a lot of materials on our website about which attorneys, what criteria each attorney should be presenting to you. But also, you want to make sure that that you're speaking with an attorney that is that you're comfortable with, right? That is understanding of your situation and is not just going to pass your case off to someone who doesn't know what they're doing just to get a filing fee from you or get a legal fee from you. So super important. It doesn't matter which project you choose, you're going to need an attorney. They're going to have to do your source of funds. That's definitely step one.